name is Joseph Carlson, and this is episode 23 of The Grief of Politics, and this is about housing. You may notice that I am alone because Avin is very sick. He called last night. It was difficult for him to speak. He had a sore throat. He said he couldn't even, I asked how he's doing this morning. He said he couldn't even eat soup. So that's bad when you can't eat soup. But he gave me some notes. The episode may be a little bit shorter. I chose housing. Avin obviously always talks about, your realtor guide, the thing that the YouTube channel has. He's very passionate about real estate. So I think he's actually really sad that he can't be part of this episode. But I will go over his points. I have some articles I found. Again, the episode might be a little bit shorter, but I am used to doing a solo podcast. My other podcast is solo. So really, to follow up on the grief part of this, like Avin and I do have this precedent of doing like pre-shows, but we don't record them. I think we recorded them once. And when I just generally said at the end of last month's episode that I wanted to do housing, Avin called me last week and we were trying to figure out a time to plan to record. And he said, well, we really have to stick on the message of grief. And we talked for about an hour because I was on a long car ride home from work. And I think what happened was he realized, or we realized together as we were talking, I think the big thing you read about in the news is it's impossible to afford a house if you have a wage nowadays or make a living. It's not only hard to get a living wage, but like, how do you prepare for the future? How do you buy a home? And so that's really where our discussion went over an hour of me driving back from, I was in another state driving back. So Avin and I talked and I was like, all right, well, write up your notes on what it's like for a first-time home buyer to buy a home, because that is the big topic that is happening nowadays. Everybody's, concerned with interest rates. And one thing I thought was interesting about the conversation, I'm just going to read some of Avin's bullet points so you'll excuse me if I'm looking over Avin's notes here. This is a pretty long text. But he basically said, housing affordability is a huge and complex issue that goes way farther than the rich people are bad, though institutional investors are part of the problem. So there's been this thing in the news. I didn't have an article, but I've seen some local news stories about people going in and investing in rentals. And then obviously the rental market is kind of dried up. So there's these homes that kind of got sucked out of the market for rentals. Maybe those people are going to sell them or, offload them, but we'll have to wait and see. They lost money as well because a lot of them, the stories I saw in the articles I read said that spent some money trying to refab them and then lost money in the rental market. Didn't really know what to do. But the other problem, I think, this is one of Avin's points. He said, home prices are driven by several factors. Supply and demand are, of course, the biggest drivers of home prices, but they are deeply affected by other things as well. Interest rates, high rates right now have reduced demand as they've sharply reduced affordability. However, during the peak in 2021, low rates made home ownership far more affordable and helped to push prices up dramatically. And I actually found an article basically saying the same things that he said. I found a Google document, basically the Google Doc, not a Google Doc. It's basically a Google search, and a lot of the websites I went to, you had to like fill out a questionnaire, and it was kind of frustrating. This is from Forbes.com though. Current mortgage interest rates for a 15-year fix are 6.23 or 6.29. 30-year jumbo loan, which is something that I just read about today, so I can't really clarify on a jumbo mortgage or a jumbo loan. That's 6.88 or 6.89, stuff like that. So that's what's happening. I mean, I know when I bought my home, it was during the crash. Interest rates were maybe 2%. So what's happening is, even though there's demand, people want to buy a house, maybe supply is bad. And now with interest rates, you may make, like, this is something Avin and I talked about in our phone call on my long drive. Even though you may make a large amount of money from the home sale, you're like, oh man, I made so much money. Well, now you have to put a bigger down payment down and the interest rate is higher. So many people are just staying in their homes. They're like, well, I can afford what I have, even it may not be really what I want. So I'm just going to stay here and I'm going to hunker down And really, that's what Avin talks about here. One thing I thought was really interesting, and this will go into one of the other articles I found. This is from NPR, and it was published on June 15th, 2022, by Jacqueline Guan. Ganon. I hope I'm saying her. I probably messed up her name. But it's entitled "The U.S. Needs More Homes, but Builders May Be Slow Constructing Them." Constructing. Oh, but builders may be slowing construction. I read that incorrectly. Sorry. They kind of go through whatever. Right here it says the U.S. is about 4 million homes short of what they need to keep up with demand. So that means we are 4 million, homes short. So people aren't selling. This is according to Freddie Mac, their big loan, whatever. During the pandemic, low mortgage rates helped drive prices up even more sharply, between 30 to 40%. In just the past 2 years, depending on which price index you looked at. Meanwhile, both the pandemic and the war in Ukraine have shaken up supply chains. Cost of residential building materials are up 19% year over year. NAHB's chief economist Robert Dietz said in a recent release. Now, with the Fed trying to fight the worst inflation in 40 years, mortgage rates have gone up dramatically from below 3%, that's probably about where I bought my home, to more than 6%. So that's more than doubled. All these factors are adding to a market where the monthly payment it takes to buy the median price home in the U.S. has become about twice as expensive in just the last 2 years. Millions of would-be homebuyers are priced out. Also, this has many people wondering whether we might be in another housing bubble that's about to burst, but most economists say while prices can't keep rising like they have and might decline in some markets, they don't expect a huge collapse in prices similar to the one that caused the national and global recession in 2008. Yeah, basically, I think the biggest thing I took away from like Avin's notes in this article is I'm not in the camp that I think. We had an episode on what I thought about the wealthy, the rich, taxes and the rich. I don't think all this is that case. I'm progressive, but I can even read other articles and go, oh, there's no homes. Like I said, since no one's moving, the musical game, the musical chairs game of all this stuff, nothing's moving. So then people just hunker down, and that's kind of where we are now, and it's affecting. Like Avin and I talked on the phone, it's affecting generational wealth. So, a long time ago, there's a lot of factors, but a long time ago, you just give your house to your relative, or property. That's not happening anymore. And so people are really just renting, it seems like, forever now. And you can't pass that along for your, we're in a spot now where people don't have the ability to do that. In other episodes, we've talked about how inflation has been gobbling up wages. So even though people's wages have gone up, they haven't really adjusted for inflation. So you're kind of at a negative gain even when you get a raise. So obviously people are looking at, well, how am I going to get a down payment? How am I going to be able to afford? I can't. There's no way I can afford this stuff, And so it just creates this cycle. If there's no homes, no one's moving, no one's building, because builders are like, well, even builders, I want to see if I can find there was a paragraph in this article right here. Oh, right here. Government officials, this is from Conter, the DNA National Alliance of Home Builders chairman, said government policies can help alleviate the problem the market is experiences. Quote, government officials need to enact policy that will support the supply side of the housing market as costs continue to climb. Conter wants the U.S. to ban lumber imports from Russia and increase timber protection from federal land. He also wants to make it easier to import lumber from Canada by suspending tariffs, and for the government to promote and fund job training programs in home building to ease shortage in construction workers. I think that's the end. That's the end of the article. But there was another article up here. There was another paragraph that I just found. Man, I wish I could. I just read it. Build. Oh, rising interest rates and record home prices are making it impossible for many Americans to buy a house. And that's making builders less confident that they'll build a home that they'll be able to sell. So they're going to put a lot of money in building materials. But what's going to happen is the interest rates are going to are going to be so high, no one's going to buy the house. So, like, what do you do? Like, Avin and I talked about maybe making incentives for FHA and like VHA, like first time home buyers, where if you're a first time home buyer, you know that's the type of housing you're building. Maybe there's some kind of approval process. You know, we're a builder, 5% of the homes we're building or whatever are for first time home buyers. So then we get this dispensation from the government or like a subsidy. So then we build that home and then that carries over into the first time home buyer. We're like, hey, this is because I was approved for a program being a first time home buyer years ago. It was a FHA, first time home buyers. And it was way better. Like my interest rate was a little lower than the national average. And I had the option to refi later on. And so this was just amazing. You know, there's no way I would have been able to afford a home without a program like this. And so I think maybe the government needs to, like the supply side, like the gentleman said in the article, maybe we need to go back to the people actually building the homes and go, all right, we're going to subsidize these homes built. You know, you tell us where you want to build the homes and we'll pick, again, maybe 5% of these projects that are ongoing. These are now earmarked for first-time home buyers. And, you know, just trying to alleviate some of it almost seems like it's gridlock in a way that, you know, no, again, people are hunkering down, builders aren't building, interest rates are too high. So even if you sell, you're going to go into another high interest rate thing. It's like this, it's a weird, everybody's kind of like waiting to see what happens with the market. And I think, you know, it's terrible. My wife and I have been talking about maybe getting a home, but like now with the interest rate spiking, we're just like, well, we're going to just freeze it out. You know, we're just going to wait. We're part of the problem. We're just going to hang out and wait and see what happens. And let me check one of other Avin's notes, which I thought was really interesting. Okay, so he has more on the new construction. He says, new construction. The other huge supply issue is home construction. For years, we've been hearing about the shortfall in new home construction. I believe the number is something like 2 million homes short of what we need nationwide. They said in the article, they said 4 million. That's Freddie Mac. Of course, that was also hurt by all the supply chain issues related to COVID, which are not fully resolved yet. We still have supply side stuff all the time. There's also the fact that even when builders are building, they're focusing mostly on move up or luxury homes because of the higher margin, not low-end homes, entry-level first home houses. We need to figure out how to properly incentivize builders to build the homes we need and how to streamline the process so it is worth their while. Working construction like I do, I work in high rises. I'm seeing a lot of like tower condo buildings go up. I'm not seeing a lot of, you know, I'm in different neighborhoods like in Seattle and stuff, but you don't see a lot of like first time homebuyer stuff. Like it would be interesting if there was a sign like in a new house that said, you know, first time homebuyer, you're approved, pre-approved or whatever, you know, or you have incentive to get this home. Like all that kind of stuff would be great. And let's see here. Inventory, we talked about that. Interest rates have gone up. We talked about that. I think another thing that I've heard is that people just, because all this is happening on top of it, on the, you know, that's all the micro stuff. The macros, people are just generally worried what's going to happen. We don't really know what's going on with Ukraine and Russia. Fuel prices may skyrocket, so that's obviously going to affect people's pocketbooks. So they're not going to want to get a home if you have to spend X amount of dollars more for fuel. And then people generally just don't know what's going on, like the supply stuff. Some of that stuff is getting worked out and it's getting slightly better, but it isn't fixed yet. And so it's just this horrible cycle right now. And I feel really bad. Like I was able to sneak in during the crash and get a home, but there's a whole generation of people now that are just frozen out of that. And it's, you know, when we talk about this podcast and talk about the grief of politics, we do really want to focus on how this is affecting normal people going about their days. And this is something where, you know, you hear a lot of talk online of the older generation. So, well, you just need to do X, Y, and Z. But like things have changed so much, that's not possible. The rules have changed. But it seems like our systems are still kind of stuck in this old way of thinking of, you know, we need to do this, do that. And like, we're really not addressing the issue. You know, I think really from talking to Avin and then reading some of these articles and reading around this, we really do need to incentivize new home buyer things. And I think unless we do that, this is just going to continue to happen. This is just going to drag out. Interest rates may drop, but I don't know by how much. It seems like they've been incrementally turning them up by like, what, 0.75%, or maybe 1%. And so again, people are just kind of holding and seeing, and people are kind of, I think, scared a little bit, you know, or at least fearful of, you know, moving. And so how do you move forward with that? You know, just let everybody know, again, this might be a quicker episode because Avin's not really here to bounce stuff off. I'm reading his notes and I've prepared articles, but I think that, you know, I want to see people, you know, part of the, not even the American dream, just part of growing up, having goals. It's like one of the things for many people is to just get a house. And the idea, I remember when I bought my house, there was just an amazing feeling of coming home. I mean, I have a small house. I mean, my house is old. You can see the wallpaper behind me. It's very old. It's only 800 square feet, but it was mine. And coming home was just such a relief to say, like, this is mine, you know, good and bad. There's a lot of bad in this old house, but just to sit on your couch in your home and say, this is mine, you know, was a great feeling. And again, it seems like a lot of people are going to get froze out of that feeling. And it makes me really sad. I hope it improves. Avin and I may talk about this a little bit next month, you know, just like a little chat up, because it is actually the last episode of the year. So we like to chat about the year so far. Maybe in January we'll talk about it. But so sorry about the shorter episode this month, but Avin was ill and, you know, reading notes off whatever. He is very passionate about housing. So maybe we'll find a way to, maybe we'll do like a part 2 of housing and end the year on like a better conversation about housing, because he is the expert. I mean, he kept talking in the car ride, and I said, listen, I am home. I do need to go home and see my wife. I wasn't being mean. I was just saying, like, he's like, you know, you need to tell me to stop talking. Like, I'm really passionate about this. So I was like, great. I picked a good topic. But he got sick. So that's terrible. So I think with that, I'll leave it. This has been episode 23 of The Grief of Politics. We talked about housing. Avin is sick. I mentioned at the beginning, but if you want, you could subscribe to the podcast on either Apple iTunes or the Google Play Store. You can find us on Spotify. The video of the podcast goes up on the 20th of every month on YouTube, as well as the podcast goes up a little bit early on the 19th. And so, yeah, subscribe. You can write to us at gwgpodfellows@gmail.com. Subscribe to us there. Do all the stuff, the likes. I'm trying to think if I forgot anything else. I have another podcast about gaming called Gaming with Grief. I'm also recording that today. I'm on episode 184, I believe. So I'm getting up there. Almost to 200. But thanks for joining me this month. Sorry again that it was a shorter video, but I hope everybody out there is healthy, happy, and safe. Have a good Thanksgiving if you're in the United States and you celebrate Thanksgiving. If you don't celebrate Thanksgiving, have a good day, man. Thursday is almost Friday. So, yeah. And if you get time off from work and you don't like Thanksgiving, just enjoy the day. All right. Have a good month, and I will talk to everybody next month.